sometimes you need a short, small project to ease your mind off maybe a longer, more of a mental grind you're having with another project, like I am right now. So that's what we're going to do tonight. And I'll tell you more the background about it. But we're going to deal with making a veneered ornament and then apply some interesting finish to really make the figure pop. In New Hampshire, New England, if you're not familiar with where we are, northeast of the United States, we have maple trees. We have lots of beautiful, mature sugar maples and others. And I thought it would be fun to make an ornament in the shape of a maple leaf as an example. Some of those giant maple trees, those do have a connection to our family memories. There's one massive tree out here we have a great family photo of. I like it because we're all around this massive maple tree and the kids are all sitting up in the crotch.
Yes.
And that tree is now dying out here. And but that would be nice to make some ornaments out of. There's some spalted wood. We actually made some spalted charcuterie boards out of that tree. If you were around for that episode, you have to be an old timer to be around for that one. But that was about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, a long time.
What if you don't have that special wood? You could make them out of something with veneer. And veneer is readily accessible to anyone. And what's really great about veneer is you can find incredibly beautifully figured dramatic veneers that would be almost impossible for you to find in the solid, or they'd be really expensive. Then you'd be resawing them or whatever. So you might have some small scraps of beautiful veneer, and this is a small project, so you don't need a lot of veneer to make them out of. And you can make a half dozen of these without any stress and give them as gifts if you like. But I've got this piece of curly maple. It's really, technically would be called more fiddleback in this area. It's got a very strong curl. It's of that grade that you would find on the back of a really fine fiddle, those really tight waves of rolling grain. Is that reflecting to you like this? Can you see it?
Yeah, that's nice, yep.
Okay, so this piece had a bad crease in it and it was kind of the cutoff near the end of a leaf. So I thought, I'm going to use this and I can get some cuts. I'm going to look for the busiest, most active place of the grain here. So I'm just going to veneer a piece about this size. So this is a great example of how you can use veneer without using a vacuum press, because it's a small project. We don't need necessarily to put it in a big press. We're just going to sandwich it between two pieces of wood we had hanging around. So we got a couple pieces of, looks like 7/8 cherry, and I'm going to use these as cauls just to squeeze the veneer on there. So in few clamps on there, and I've got my own little mini press. No stress. And we're going to get this in, this is the size we need. I do have my pattern, check that out, my little maple leaf pattern. And guess where I got that? Right out in the yard. I came in with a nice leaf. I looked around for one that was nicely shaped and traced it off. And then we made, I actually, is this the one? Yes, I spray adhesive it to a piece of 1/8 inch plywood, like, or 3mm Baltic. Could be something thin like that, that's hard. And I sprayed it and then I sawed it out and I had my hard template now. So I don't have to, you know, it's hard to trace around a thin papery piece like that. But if by the end of this you really have fallen in love with this maple leaf.
We'll probably just put a link to a PDF of that shape.
Yeah, a pattern. So you can get this actual same leaf pattern. This one is like 2 3/4 wide. But once you have it, you could blow it up or do whatever you want with it, okay? If you like this pattern. All right, so I'm gonna use that. And so to get that, I needed a piece this wide. I'm going to have the grain running this way, the long way, on both sides. This is actually a piece of bending ply, pretty flimsy, but once I run the grain the opposite way of the bend on both sides, I'm going to have a more rigid piece of plywood. I could just have easily used a piece of 3mm Baltic, which is more firm. It doesn't have as much give, and that would make a nice ornament too. Okay, so no rule, but I would keep it thinner than thicker. The nice thing about this is because it's plywood, you can decorate it with whatever kind of thin veneer, and you're going to have a really nice, stable, long-lasting piece. If you make them out of solid and you make them very thin, there's the chance that they can break, especially with a design like this where you have some little sharp points that are going to be, some of them are going to be cross grain and may break off. But you don't really have to worry about that when you use this method. So we're going to go with the veneer method. And now that we have our template, we're ready to cut out our shapes here on our piece. So I'm seeing this is the really richest, crazy, wild figured area right here. And let's see, I'm going to make a few pencil marks. And then rather than the veneer saw for this, I don't need joint lines, so I'm just going to cut with a knife. I'm okay. You can get really decent joint lines with the knife, but this is not critical here. Okay, so let's get it right here, and that looks good. Yeah, should just draw the whole thing. And then down here, I need a straight edge. Get the whole thing out of one.
Is there a maximum size, width, I should say, that veneer comes in, Tom?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've got it in some really wide widths, but it's sort of like lumber. You tend not to see it, crazy wide. Last time I think I showed a piece of poplar veneer that was 24 inches wide, but you probably can, I think you can find it actually wider and easier than you can find solid wood. So check it out. It's I've mentioned a number of times, if you want to get veneer, some really small pieces, there's some interesting ways. You can call up a veneer dealer. A lot of times we use Certainly Wood. I'm just going to take my scalpel here while I'm talking and slice. And Certainly Wood is a lumber dealer in upstate New York, and you can go on their website and just look at all the leaves.
Did you mean veneer dealer?
Oh, sorry. What did I say?
Lumber.
Veneer dealer. Yeah, veneer. But another way, and I picked up some small, gorgeous flitches, is to look at eBay and just search figured veneer or specific types. And you're going to see these little bundles come up, and I think they're by people who do a lot of veneer work, and you have these beautiful, small cutoffs that are too nice to throw out, you know that feeling, or they're just not big enough for them to use like on their next project. They may be doing larger panels for whatever reason. I've got some gorgeous veneer that way, so, and you can get it, packs of it. They're smaller pieces, but they're just scraps. But go on there, you'd be surprised what you'll find on eBay. Oh, did I just cut that too small? No. Phew. Okay. So now let me look at that. I mean, that's a sweet active piece, and it should make some beautiful ornaments. Okay, so now I'm just going to cut this. I'm just going to cut it exactly to the size of this. It's no big deal. This is a a little bit oversized anyway. Okay. Look at that. Oh man. How come I never get tired of this stuff?
Hey, real quick, your favorite finish on genuine mahogany for a frame?
Oh, genuine mahogany. You got to go with the orange shellac. Is beautiful on it. Honestly, just amber shellac is gorgeous on it. Okay. And it's going to darken on its own over time. All right, so check this out. Now I've got my pieces, and there you have some beautiful, I can feel the waves. It's really ripply. And that looks really active, and both sides are really good. But you'd be surprised, in one reference, it tends to reflect and look better than the other side. I'm going to glue these to this panel and sandwich them around like this, okay? Now, when I make my ornaments, I'm going to have them like this, so they'll have cross stripes on it in that way. And, you know, you'll see either side of the ornament. Now, there's one thing about curly maple that is kind of interesting and to think about. It tends to look better, more active and vibrant with the curl from one position, one look. So I usually try to hold it and look down on it the way it's going to be catching light on the tree, or the Christmas tree, you imagine. And this one's pretty even. I think it's a little better this way. It's hard to actually see with the camera light on it, but you'll know what I mean when you do it. If you don't see a difference, don't worry about it. This is more active this way. So I'm going to make this my top. Let's put a little T right here, so I remember that when I am laying them out. Okay, so now I've got that set. I'm ready to glue it up. Now I'm also going to put a piece of paper on each side so I don't get glue ooze and glue it to my cauls. That would not be nice. All right, so with veneer like this, you just keep yourself organized. So this is going this way. I'm just going to open it like a book. And now I'll get glue on both sides of this, and then I'll put it back in, okay? All right, so I'm going to just use white glue for this. No big deal. And just squeeze it on there and get it rolled out. I'm curious to hear from you all what kind of Christmas traditions revolve around an object that comes out only at Christmas. You know, I think a lot of us, of course, we have nativity scenes, and that, as we were kids, that was probably the primary one for us. We used to love when my father was in the service, in the he just missed World War II. He was over in Italy, you know, he was on like an aircraft carrier for a while in the Navy, and he picked up on one of his trips inland this beautiful nativity scene from Italy, and all the little characters were, all right, I'm going to put this on while I'm talking, were beautifully, these little ceramic characters, and it was so nice. And we had a real wooden stable, and as kids that was so exciting to open up because it was obviously valuable and special. And you know, I can see so many nativity scenes these days, but there's never been one like that one. I'm curious about what kind of objects, other than maybe that, or maybe ornaments you've made. special things that come out at Christmas.
And Hanukkah, people who have
Yeah,
Hanukkah related
yeah, I don't mean to exclude. I'm just so familiar with
things.
Christmas and the Christian calendar.
Ceramic Scottish Terrier Christmas tree. That's interesting.
Wow. Is that a small tree or a large ceramic tree?
Oh, a nativity scene made from past Christmas trees. Those are
Oh,
cool.
wow. That's a cool idea.
Greg says every year I make a wood-turned ornament and my collection has grown a lot.
Oh, wow. Do you date them, and so you know what year you made them? Was that Craig?
Greg.
Greg. Do you date them, Greg? Or do you keep
Yeah,
track
that's
of what
cool.
year you made them? That's a great idea.
Linda says my mom had a creche from France with figures called santons. I don't know. I remade the creche barn for them a few years ago. That's cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Dan, we both have glass ornaments from our parents. They get put on the small tabletop every Christmas.
That's awesome. Whoops. Put that on.
Michael says I made a Christmas tree box last year.
Oh, really?
That's cool.
What, to put the tree in the box?
Yeah, he said his wife requested it.
Oh, wow.
He didn't know there was such a thing. Fred says the angel that goes on top of the tree was made by my wife 50 years ago.
Wow.
That's cool.
That's
Andy,
awesome.
my grandmother had a ceramic shop and made us Christmas trees. Rich, ugly Christmas trees. Ugly Christmas sweater contest. We draw names out to see who gets the sweater and they have to add decorations to it. Oh, that's a great idea.
All right, so you see what I'm doing? We're having so much talking about this. This is really nice. I love hearing your
Interesting.
stories.
Yes.
All right, so I'm making the sandwich here. I spread the glue on the middle, then I just reoriented my pieces the way I had marked them, and now I'm putting the paper and the caul, and we're going to squeeze them up.
Greg does sign and date all of them, he says.
Nice. All right, so I'm going to
Ooh, leather ornaments.
leather.
Another Greg says he made tooled leather ornaments. That's cool.
Wow. Now, this is cool because you just need regular clamps, and I can get a grab here.
Would wax paper work better than paper on that, Tom?
It would work just as, yeah, I don't have the wax paper out here. There's very little squeeze out here, but sure, wax paper would definitely work well. Regular paper is just going to catch the glue, and you'll know right where there was glue because the paper will stay on, but it will just be very thin. What I'm using is a closed grain wood, this curly maple, but it's not like using oak or something that's quite porous that weeps a lot. So I don't anticipate much. Sometimes around the edges though you get a little bit, so just a good idea. And you just want to spread out the clamps so you get nice even pressure. And I'm going to just put 6 on here.
Gosh, there's so many great ideas. You're going to have to read this later, Tom.
Yeah, I'd love to.
You guys are creative.
I'll share with you guys what the project after Christmas that I was working on here. I'll let you in on the whole story. Hopefully I don't get emotional while I'm telling it. I was telling my sister today, and I got verklempt.
Is this a project I know about?
The one I said I was doing with my nephew.
Oh, right. You talked about it last week.
Well, I talked about it.
Oh, you talked about it with the
coffee.
neighbors. Yeah.
I talked about it to the neighbors in the neighborhood. We have a coffee
with Tom.
regularly
experience.
where it's pretty informal. I'll just show you what's going on, everything else in the shop. But there we go. Look at that. No veneer press needed, just some clamps and a couple of flat boards. I'm going to set this aside, and let's take one out of the oven. This is a different one. I didn't just use sleight of hand there. And if some of you are noticing, the handles are not all the same. So we're going to take this one out and see how it did. And we're going to process it. What?
Let's see what we got.
What?
Let's see what we have.
Oh. I thought somebody was...
Magician.
Yeah. Not like
My
some
goodness,
people I
Rich
know.
says, I used to make keepsake boxes or serving trays for the whole family, 98 siblings.
What?
What? He might mean
Oh, family members?
family members.
Wow. All right, so here it is. It's come out of the press. See, I'll take off the paper, and I can feel little bits tacking it, but none even stuck on this one. But look at that. Isn't that sweet? So now, look at it's way more rigid. I mean, it bends very little.
8 siblings, he says.
8. I was going to say 98. That would be...
Starting to feel your mother's pain.
All right, so we have big families in my neighborhood, but not quite like that. All right, so now that I've got it like this, I'm going to give it a little sanding. This is nice because I've got it hooked up to the Festool, and I've got a piece of 220 on there, and it's hooked up to the vacuum, so you get virtually no dust. Usually after I use something like that, I will sand just very quickly with the grain. Looks nice.
Do you ever sand through veneer, Tom?
Very infrequently. If you do it on a large surface, it's actually quite hard to go through veneer. It takes a lot. And if you start with 220 grit paper, I'll start with 150. If you have some, even this grain is kind of like undulating. Those dark lines are actually end grain coming up toward you. So with that waviness, it's actually a harder wood because you're into end grain, side grain, end grain, side grain. And to sand through it takes a lot. So you could actually start with 150, go to 220, but you don't want to stay long on the 150. All right, so now that I've got this, I would go ahead and start cutting out my pieces, but I want to share with you, if you don't remember or need a refresher on this, a technique to make the curl figure here really pop. This also works on other kinds of woods like quilted material and other that have a strong figure, but it's especially good on curly. But we want to bring out that curl very strongly. We want to really make it shine. I'm going to bring in some dye stain. So this is a black dye, which we're going to start with, and it's in alcohol. So this was actually started with black, and so we're going to go after a finish similar to that. And to get those curls to really accentuate in that way, you start with black like this. And this is an alcohol. So, seems crazy, right? But it's absorbing more deeply into those fibers that are, like I just said, it's rolling grain. So those darker lines are at end grain sweeping up toward you. Okay, I just want to get it on there evenly. This dries really fast. I'm going to push everything really fast here on the finish because we don't have much time. Now I'm doing it while it's all full because I have to resand this, and it's much easier to do this step while it's still a big board before we've cut it into the small ornaments. You'd have to fuss and hold the little tiny ornaments, but we can go ahead and prep this whole piece, and this stage can be much easier if we sand while we're in this.
David's asking, trans tint?
Yeah. Well, this you can use. Yeah, you can use trans tint in alcohol. I use something else. I used a what's called black nigrosin. Nigrosin. I don't know. Can you read that? In alcohol. I shared that on the episode where we talked about finishes, but
I'll link to that.
But you don't need that. I mean, that's a special kind of concentrated powder. You could definitely do it with trans tint, something like that, in alcohol. Okay, so that's a good one to start because that first one goes fast, and you really should let it dry for about 15 minutes. But I'm going to hurry up and just show you what happens here. So here we go. I've got 320, and now what you want to do is sand this evenly so that you're taking away some of that surface black. So I want to go evenly and try to spread out.
Mark's curious. He says, yeah, I've wondered about other color dyes for accentuating curl. Are there any other color dyes you've used?
Yeah, I have used like browns, like dark browns. You'll get this very similar effect. What's interesting is I'm using black, but it's hard to tell those are black. They look like dark red by the end of this process because the colorant later mixes with what's left in there. So it doesn't show black. I don't know, where am I holding it when it's good?
Right there's good.
Okay. Mm-hmm. You can see that it's more of a dark, but it's almost black. So this, by the way, this technique I learned from watching a video online of PRS guitar finishers. That's a really, you could check that out. PRS guitars, they're known for their beautiful finishes on particularly curly maple. And sometimes you'll see quilted maple, but they use this step this is where I got it. You know, I figured, hey, those guys are working on these little tiny things, trying to bring the maximum pop effect in the natural wood. What I want to do is sand that until I have a nice even kind of lightness. Let me show you one that's done. And I would go a little further than that. See that? I'd get it a little whiter than that. I think because it's wet. I'm just going to go a little more in one area. So I want to create like an evenness, but I don't want to leave the surface too dark, okay? So if I just stop right there, and let's get a paper towel. There, you can see, we don't want to go quite white. I want a little lighter than that. So you want to leave about that, okay? All right, so now, once you've lightly sanded, now we're ready to make our cuts. So I'm going to just cut this. First, I'm going to just chunk this up into 4 pieces. So I've made a little line here. And I also indicated on each one, I put a little T to show that's the top of it. So when I lay out my leaf, that's where I was getting the most reflection of the curl. All right, let's head over to the bandsaw. I can cut 4 at a time. I'll show you here. We go. Safety glasses. Now, we're going to bring in our pattern, and here's my little maple leaf. I'm going to set it on there, and that fits nicely. So I'll just draw it on this one. Just got to trace it out. I'm using a pen. It's going to get cut off pretty much, or sanded off at the very end. I probably should have used some smoother pattern. You're not going to have to watch me saw out this whole thing. I'll just saw one little section because it does take time, you know. And I'm going to use the bandsaw. I've got a 1/4-inch blade on the bandsaw right now, and 6 teeth per inch for all you bandsaw aficionados, and also, but ideally, I mean, something like this could ideally be cut on a scroll saw. All right, so now I'm going to organize these so that I make sure the pattern is going to be covering the plywood here. I should go this way. And I'm going to attach these together. Now I could tape them, or you could think double stick tape or taping around, something like that. And that definitely works. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and nail this together out in the areas with a little pin nailer.
Similar to those aspen leaves. Beautiful.
So I'm going to just snip these back a little bit, and you could file them or hammer them. I use a little hammer.
Putting words or names on these kinds of things, how would you do that, Tom?
Words or names?
Yeah.
Well, it depends. I mean, you could go as primitive as writing it. You could hand engrave or write,
Burn it in there.
Use a laser engraver. You could sign it, and these kind of projects, you could set it up. It's like a mini CNC machine, basically cutting these things out. All right, so I've got my pin nails at the corners. I want to make sure I don't hit those, but I would work on the top area first. I'd leave these for last. Let's just go ahead. Okay, we lost you guys while I was sawing. All I did was cut out one little quadrant of the leaf. So you'd go ahead around and cut out the whole thing. I leave this point last so I can leave those 2 pin nails in there. And then once I cut that, so it never slips apart. So you can multiply your efforts by stacking them. I could do even more than 4 because this saws through nicely. But you have to, probably 6 would be the max, I would think. And then you gotta just clean up the edges quickly. And for that, I put it in the vise. And with a file, I just smooth up those edges. And you don't have to spend a lot of time on this. You don't want those edges to be all ragged. So I'd go around like that. And then I'd come in with a piece of sandpaper. See, this is nice. While they're all thick, you're sanding 4 at once. You're getting the whole edge, and just that little section right there is nice and smooth. And then when they're all done, actually they're all apart. I've sawn them all apart, so I'm just holding them in position and clamping them in there. I no longer have them pin nailed, obviously, but I had sawn all around. So you'd be doing this sanding and filing while they're still together, because you can just keep them aligned and you can really go through it quickly. All right, then once you have them all, you're going to end up with leaves like this. And at the very end, I just came around with the paper. I was all smooth in this way, and then I just held the paper at an angle and swiped it downward to break these edges. Okay, so this is all soft and nicely rounded. I hope you can see that. And it didn't take long at all. But look at that dark curl in there. Doesn't look like it's gonna be that nice looking. But see how doing that step early saved you from having to try sanding these little guys. I didn't show you earlier this other piece of veneer. It's crotch McCory, and it's just so active. And this is a cutoff from a big project I did years ago that I saved. I've got a bunch of little pieces of this. So these little pieces come in handy for projects like this. Well, I used that McCory and I made a couple other leaves. So look at that. So this is almost like a rust color. It is browner. So I have to decide, do I want to stain these or do I want to go natural? If you go natural, you're going to have like a brown, dried out leaf. I guess I'll put red on one of them and we'll see how it looks. And let's go with the process on these guys. So the next step for that PRS guitar red, like I showed you here, is to add an orange next. This is the trans tint in water. So the way that PRS does it is that first stain is an alcohol-based black, sand it off. The next orange is in water, and that you got to let it dry a little before the next stage. And the last colorant, which we're going to go with on the orange, is red. And that they use an oil-based stain. So there's something about each stain step being a different solvent. Because I think what's happening is you don't get as much washout or blending of the colorants to maximize each step. But they do all kind of filter through. You don't actually notice it that much, but those little things make a difference. I'm going to just use water for my orange and my red because I don't have any oil red, but you'll get the idea. So this orange just goes on. Check this out. And this is going to look like a really beautiful fall leaf, right? And if you had an engraver, you could write a little message to somebody or a poem or a memory of a trip you took. And
reminds me of that stuff we used to put on our cuts when we were kids.
Oh yeah, chlorochrome? What was that stuff called? Somebody knows. All right, and then we'll get the other side, but look how that's coming to life. And see how the lines don't look black really anymore. This just goes right in it. So you get these enhanced curl lines without them looking black. All right, so I'm going to just set that aside for a second.
Mercurochrome.
Mercurochrome, that's right. All right, we'll do one more.
Tincture of merthiolate.
Oh my gosh.
Fred, that must be something you know from your...
We're getting the
Betadine.
actual name there. The scientific name. Okay, so this is a good time, as you see me doing, hitting the edges. So those get like a solid color. And then we have the beautiful figure showing up on the face. Isn't that cool? I thought of doing some with quilted, but I have to stop myself when I'm prepping because I get carried away. And then I don't have time to show you. But there you go. Once you've got the orange, I let that dry a little bit till it flashes off. Or if you're in a hurry, you can use a heat gun like this and just blast it, right? But it is interesting, the complexity of the color that you get here with the orange and the red. It's neither all orange nor red, but PRS calls it the fire red color that you can get as an option for one of their guitars. And I'm talking about electric guitars, of course. All right, so I'm going to take one of these and make it red. Okay, let's I'll do the other one natural.
Already have orange on them?
Look at that. No, these are actually the McCory. This is just the natural wood. So it's a little different figure, but it almost looks curly, doesn't it? It's got the curly figure of the crotch there. But again, you go around. This is a ruby red from J.E. Moser's. It's just a water dye stain. You could get any, I think, red, and you'd get very close to the same thing. All right, so there we've got, look at a nice red leaf. So here we've got red and orange, but this one in the Macquarie. I'll leave the other one, the other Macquarie natural. And let's go ahead and do the full treatment that PRS would do. After this had dried a little longer, you would go with the red on top of the orange. And what you get, see, I'm not really let that dry enough to fully work.
Alan has a question, huh? He says,
Sure.
I always love the orange color of Paduke. Am I saying that right? When it's freshly
Yeah.
cut. Is the orange dye a way to retain that orange color and prevent it from turning brown?
Gosh, Ellen, I don't know. That Paduke is, yeah, that just is oxidizing, and that's how it goes. I don't have enough experience. Does anyone know the answer to that question? Like, all the Paduke I've seen has gone orange. You know, it's interesting. I'm dealing with a similar question. I've been experimenting with the mahogany that I'm planning to put on my son's guitar that I'm making, and see how that's more red. But if I had let it dry, it would be a little more distinguished. But if you look over here, you can see that's the same colorant. Okay, so we went with the black, orange, and red for the PRS Fire Red. Okay, so that's a little redder leaf. I'm going to just leave that one orange, and that way I'll have a nice combination. And oh, let me finish that thing. I'm working with the Cuban mahogany. This is a piece of the Cuban mahogany veneer. This is natural. It's been exposed a little bit to the light, so it's browned out a little bit, but not that much. This side I've treated with 2 coats of bleach, so wood bleach. The AB formula, you mix 2 together, and that gives you, that just bleaches out the color. So that's just been bleached. So I'm going to very lightly sand that, and then experiment with putting color back on. Because I'm trying to control, just like you mentioned with the Paduke, the color after. Because the color of that natural mahogany goes so dark over time. And my son liked the brighter, almost orange, bright color in the photographs, like that photo. Can you show that on the wall? That's the same wood on a bow front sideboard there, and that is similar to the pattern that I'm going to use on the guitar. But under the photography lights, and it being freshly finished, it really looks more bright, like orange beams of sunlight. So you get that light and dark beamy thing. But as time goes on, it gets darker, like this panel up here above the bench. And he wanted it to stay kind of lighter. And so all that's to say, I don't know about Paduke, but I'm just finding that the only way I think you can control it from changing is to find some sealer that keeps it from going, which I don't know, or you bleach the color out, and then you're putting fake color back. I don't know if that would even work with Paduke. All right, so let's just finish this up, top coat it, and I won't spray that, but oh, I want to show you one other little shape. I had a little heart that I made too. You can make any shape you want, but this is a lot smoother to cut around. But okay, so here's some that I've got a little bit of lacquer on. The nice thing about these is once they're dry, I just very lightly sand them because you don't want to mess with the color, and then spray a little lacquer on there. I don't have gloves anymore. So here's one. I've only got 2 thin coats on, but you want to build it up. I just use this Minwax or Watco. I got the Watco semi-gloss at Walmart. It dries faster than the Minwax, so I do like it more for small projects like that. All right, well, wasn't that fun? I mean, that was a nice little dive into finishing, and also, using veneers on small projects in creative ways. Once again, if you enjoy this kind of content, head on over to epicwoodworking.com. And also, if you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing. That's it for tonight. On behalf of the camera lady and myself, we look forward to seeing you next time, right back here. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.